Comfort feels like safety. Warmth, softness, convenience, predictability, these are signals our brains associate with stability and control. In normal life, that association is mostly correct, but in survival situations, history shows it can be lethal. Over and over again, people who prioritized comfort made decisions that quietly destroyed their chances of staying alive. This isn't about toughness or, romantic hardship. It's about how comfort changes behavior, judgment, and timing in ways that work against survival when systems break down. One of the most dangerous effects of comfort is that it postpones decisions that need to be made early. History shows that people who waited until they were uncomfortable often waited too long. Explorers delayed building shelter because the weather was still tolerable. Soldiers postponed digging positions because the ground was dry and easy to move across. Civilians delayed evacuation because homes still felt livable. By the time comfort disappeared, options had narrowed or vanished entirely. Survivors acted while conditions were still manageable. They built shelter before they needed it. They stopped moving before exhaustion forced them to. They accepted short-term discomfort to avoid long-term exposure. Comfort convinces people there is time. Survival often depends on acting as if there isn't. Cold weather casualties frequently occurred not because people lacked insulation, but because they were too warm while moving. Overheating caused sweating. Sweat led to wet clothing. Wet clothing led to hypothermia once activity stopped. Comfort during movement created danger during rest. Survivors learned to operate slightly cold, slightly hungry, slightly restrained. Discomfort was information. Comfort was misleading. Comfort dulls awareness. When people feel secure, they stop paying attention to small changes. Historical accounts from camps, convoys, and settlements repeatedly show disasters striking when people felt settled. Fires spread in so-called safe camps. Floods hit after people stopped watching water levels. Enemy attacks succeeded when sentries relaxed because, nothing had happened for a while. Survivors maintained vigilance precisely because they did not allow themselves to feel fully comfortable. They treated calm as temporary. Modern survival failures often trace back to dependence on comfort systems. Heating systems, vehicles, food supply chains, and communication networks make life easy until they fail, and when they do, people who relied on them struggle to adapt. History shows that survivors didn't expect systems to work. They assumed failure and built habits that functioned without support. They layered clothing manually. They cooked simply. They traveled at a human pace. Comfort systems replace skills. When comfort disappears, the skills are gone too. Another quiet danger of comfort is rigidity. People build routines and structures optimized for comfort rather than adaptability. Shelters are built in convenient locations instead of safe ones. Camps are established near resources without regard for drainage or wind. Routes are chosen for ease rather than reliability. When conditions change, comfortable setups fail catastrophically. Survivors favored flexibility over comfort. Their shelters were crude but movable. Their routines were repetitive but adjustable. Comfort locks people into decisions. Survival requires the ability to abandon them. This is actually one of the least discussed survival advantages. Mild discomfort keeps the mind engaged. Cold sharpens attention. Hunger encourages planning. Fatigue forces prioritization. Historical survivors didn't seek suffering, but they accepted controlled discomfort as part of staying alive. They regulated effort to avoid exhaustion, not discomfort. They tolerated inconvenience to preserve clarity. The goal was not comfort, but function. So much of today's survival advice, really centers on recreating comfort, even in the harshest conditions. We're talking about better sleep systems, warmer shelters, and, more convenient gear. While these things can certainly help, they often end up shifting our focus away from what really matters, our behavior. If we look back at history, it's pretty clear that behavior mattered far more than comfort. Survivors made it through not because they were comfortable, but because they stayed aware, kept moving, and honestly were conservative with their choices. Comfort should really be a byproduct of good decisions, not the objective itself. Comfort, it feels like success, but in survival situations it often signals danger. It delays action, dulls awareness, encourages dependency, and honestly, it hides risk. The people who lived the longest didn't actually seek comfort. They sought margin. Margin in energy, margin in time, margin in options. They stayed slightly uncomfortable on purpose because, discomfort kept them honest about reality. That lesson, it really hasn't changed. When comfort becomes the goal, survival becomes fragile.